Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is 2 o'clock, time to start this meeting. My name is John Walsh and I'm Chairman of the Planning Committee for this municipal year. To my left is the Vice Chairman, Councillor Ayub, and to his left is Paul Whittingham, who's Head of Development. To my right is representative for Council's Legal Department, Nicola Raby, and to the extreme right is Susan Bailey, who is Committee Clerk and runs the meeting. On the table behind me are 3 planning officers, Alex Allen, Helen Williams and Martin Mansell, and they will be advising on each of the reports. We'll come to the detail of handling the reports when we come to item 6 on the agenda. But item 1 is fire evacuation procedures, please.
Yes, Chair, if the alarm sounds, we will need to leave the room. The quickest way out is the route that you just came in through. If you turn directly to your left out of these doors, go down 2 flights of stairs and we'll exit out onto the square until it's safe to return.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Councillor Sherrington.
Chair. Right, thank you. I'm back on. 148 is Moorgate Primary School. I won't be taking part in this application, but I won't be leaving the room.
955081/15. I know the applicant and I've discussed the application with him. I will be leaving the meeting.
Chair, I think the item's actually been deferred. All right, sorry, I was going to declare an interest on that, but I don't need to then, do I? Right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So during the application 06551/19, Plodder Lane, Harbour Green Ward, I won't be taking part in committee. I know some of the members of the neighbouring families and I've been involved in discussions about objecting. Thank you.
Thank you. Urgent business, item 3. There's nothing been brought to my attention.
No, Chair.
Item 4, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies today from Councillors Connor, Conliffe, Watters, Weatherby and Wilkinson. Most of them have managed to send deputies.
Item 5, minutes of the previous meeting. These have been circulated. Members agree there was a correct record? Thank you. We come then to item 6, planning applications. If I can explain that these will be taken not in the order in which they appear on the agenda, but the order in which we've had registered expressions to speak on each of the items. We will call each item. The officers will present the case. We will then invite a ward councillor, if present and registered, to speak for 5 minutes. An objector will then speak for up to 3 minutes and be subject to questioning by members of the committee. And an applicant will then speak, or supporter of the applicant will then speak for up to 3 minutes and again be subject to questioning by members of the committee. Members may also ask technical questions to officers. So we begin today with application 6687, Lostock Skip Hire, on page 132 in the bundle. Mr. Allen, I think this is yours.
Thank you, Chair. The proposal is for the erection of 1 industrial unit which will be used for office space, used in conjunction with the existing Lostock Skip Hire.
Sorry, before we go further, Mr. Allen, I should have said, apologies, that one application has been withdrawn. Application 95081, St Paul's Mill. That application is not being considered today. The applicant has asked for that to be deferred to the next meeting. My apologies for that. Sorry, Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Chair. Let's just continue. The application has been amended since its original submission to remove a proposed parking area at the side of residence fences. Parking is alternatively planned at the side of the proposed building. Just like to draw members' attention to the late list at the penultimate page. There's a plan which as members will have seen on site this morning, the actual physical structure of the building was originally granted permission in 2007 for a mix of office and B8 warehousing distribution use. That development was commenced, and the proposed building as under this application is one of those buildings, and obviously in terms of height, siting, massing, etc., is identical to the previously approved and partially constructed unit. Explicit within the proposal is the use of an existing track which is located to the rear of the existing skip hire business, which is formed with hard standing currently, and it lies adjacent to the adjoining residential properties on Butterwick Fields to the east and Hazel Pear Close to the north. The existing track forms the access to the wider site, runs along the side of residential properties who have a 1.8 metre high fence which separates them from the site. The site forms part of a large employment allocation, therefore the creation of a new employment-related office space in this location fully complies with policy. The overall design materials used are compatible with that of the building and the existing industrial estate which it is located within. The overall use of the site would not change in terms of the complaints raised by local residents, and most of the issues are dealt with by the Environment Agency as the enforcement authority. The closest residential properties to the units are located on Hazel Pear Close, numbers 58 to 62 and number 70. These properties are circa 21 metres away. Whilst there is a modest level difference between the properties and the units, it's not considered that the proposal would result in a loss of privacy or light. In terms of the impact on residential living conditions, pollution control officers recommend that the hours of the unit are conditioned to between 7 in the morning till 6 at night on weekdays, 7 till 1 on Saturdays, and no operations on Sundays or bank holidays. Details of lighting and proposed fixed plant would be secured by condition to ensure residential amenity is not harmed. From a highways perspective, this existing track is to be resurfaced, which will provide adequate access to the unit as well as sufficient car parking to meet the council's maximum standards. Officers note that the principle of employment development is acceptable and the impacts on residential amenity are limited, bearing in mind the proposed office use, hours of use and control of the lighting and fixed plant. Therefore, officers recommend approval as the proposal complies with the relevant development plan policies and that there are no other material considerations which justify refusal of permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Can we just be clear, Mr. Allen, that the application is in effect for the access to this development as that the office development has begun and could be completed under an existing planning consent?
It is. The 2007 permission provided access through the main access that we were on this morning. Whilst it's not within the description, that is correct. It's for the provision of tarmacking to the hard surfaces, so the creation of an access.
Thank you. Could I therefore invite the objector, Mr. David Grant, to come forward, please? Thank you, Mr. Grant. You have 3 minutes, and that will be signalled as you come to the end of that time, and then we'd like to take any questions from the committee. Thank you.
Good afternoon. When this application came to Horwich Town Council 2 months ago, it had 38 objections, and since that date, more have been raised. Yet the report claims only 18 are logged. It's important that this glitch, as per Councillor Greenhouse called it, is corrected, as the public need to have 100% confidence in the system, otherwise it could call into question the legitimacy of all planning applications. With the help of officers, and in particular Cara Hamer, a lot of residents' material objections have been answered. So I would like to thank you on behalf of residents and your kind consideration. That said, concerns still exist. Last year, residents started to complain of coughs, skin irritations, exasperated asthmatic conditions, and regretfully, 2 children were admitted to hospital with breathing difficulties. Whilst the work done at the site is not a material planning consideration, this does link into the site condition report, which they added into the planning documents. This shows the Environment Agency gave them permission to increase their waste processing from 19,000 tonnes to 56,000 tonnes. This correlates directly with the time frame that the conditions residents have suffered. The Environment Agency conducted the approval as a desktop study with no involvement of highways planning and absolutely zero public consultation. I believe this application, as well as being for the office block, is in fact an opportunity to rubber stamp a retrospective planning consent via the back door, and residents are concerned for the future expansion that this move of the buildings will allow. Other material considerations: a full flood prevention plan must be included in the roads and not just the building. The current assessment refers only to the actual building area, which claims, as the development is on a hill, flooding isn't expected to be an issue. A lack of removal of groundwater on the current site has led to flooding in residents' gardens, and moving to a non-permeable surface could worsen that if not correctly drained. Also, windows at the back of the property are for light only. However, residents are concerned that it would not take much alteration to create a mezzanine floor and thereby accessing them, which would then unacceptably impede their privacy as their properties are less than 20 metres away. Residents are also curious as to the viability of the windows, as they are west-facing and the light would therefore be restricted to ambience only. Surely skylights on the top would provide a lot more illumination and be more practical for this development. Should the windows remain, residents are concerned that lights could be left on, and this would cause an unacceptable breach of their rights and peaceful enjoyment of their home. You will have seen on your site visit the homes directly behind are 3 stories with bedrooms facing the building and are only 90 metres away. This could have a direct effect on residents' sleeping patterns and well-being. So I ask that a solution is included. Finally, there is a designated turning area, which I'm informed by Highways is required as the road is a dead end. We are happy with that, as long as it's stipulated this must not become a skip storage area, as the current turning area is now. Residents insist the new road and turning area must be for vehicles only and free from skips to prevent the current situation, where skips are sometimes fully laden. Thank you, that's fine.
Are there any questions? Councillor Hornby.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Grant, can you just expand a little bit? You talked about the flooding aspect with this application, and in particular, I want to know, before this all commenced, was that a problem then? Has it increased in particular since this development started?
It has been a major issue for many years, since the houses that I purchased, one of the last houses on the estate. And a couple of years ago, the water started to encroach the gardens of the neighbouring, particularly in the corner where you may have seen some of the large container skips. It encroached so far that they actually had to put sandbags down to prevent it entering their property. As you will have seen, there is quite a large amount of mud banks that build up around the area. This just exasperates the problem, which is why I requested that the skips are not put on this road, and that drainage should be considered for the road, and where that drainage goes to. You can't just move it down further down the road for it to affect somebody else.
Any further questions? Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Horwich Town Council and residents have been quite vocal about this new building. As a local resident, do you feel that this would impact on future pollution?
Councillor Wright, before you go further on that, can we be clear, we're not talking about the building. The building has planning consent. We're talking this afternoon about the access road.
Whilst the actual application is for the building, one must question why they're moving the building to the periphery and opening a wide open space in the centre of the site. This is purely for increased expansion of the site. They've already increased it threefold without any public consultation. So yes, I think it would impact future pollution with the growth of the site.
Any further questions? Thank you, Mr Grant.
the drainage of pipes being put in the garden. That, I think that therefore support.
Alan?
The revised development some signage to go at the site. So the current site access off Star Lane will be designated as HGV vehicles only, skip vehicles, and the access road to the office as cars only. So that's going to be controlled in that way. The idea of using this building for the office is to create that separation for vehicles for safety. The current office location is in the middle of the site and it's unsafe for people to be walking across. So having this access road around the back to a separate car parking area provides a much safer environment for people using the building, whether that's staff or visitors. Okay.
Councillor Hornby.
Thank you, Chair. Following on from what Councillor Allen has asked and your response to that, are you prepared to accept some form of condition that no HGVs or anything like that will use that road?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's been discussed with the planning officers, and that's why the signage is noted on the revised site plan. So the conditions then put forward that the development must be carried out in accordance with that drawing. So it clarifies the point you've made there, basically, that yes, we are accepting no HGVs will be down that part of the road.
Following on from that, Chair, if I can, are you able then to the entrance into that area to restrict the width of it so a HGV cannot get through there?
I'm sure that can be looked at. It's the width is suitable for a car and provides turning area for a vehicle. It wouldn't need to be made much narrower, I wouldn't have thought, to restrict HGVs, but you at the same time you still need to allow a car suitable width to drive down there.
Councillor Bullock.
Could you have a height limiter on? When you're talking about the width, the height limiter, you know, to stop skip wagons going up there.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't see that being a particular issue at all. Let's say the applicant wants it for use for cars, ordinary vehicles. So yeah, a limiter to stop a skip vehicle going down there isn't an issue, because that's not his intention.
Councillor Wright.
This office building that you're proposing to build is one floor on it, am I right? Yeah. Just the ground floor. Oh, sorry.
Trying to get the mic on. So, yes, whilst the building's as tall as it is, the office is proposed as ground floor only. Yes.
Why have you included an upper floor windows all around the office building? Surely that's just adding extra expense. And just to put people's mind at rest, in case you maybe at a future date, putting another floor in, could you change those to skylights instead of the windows?
The windows are there just to bring the elevation in line with what's happening on ground floor, just to simplify things that way. It will bring extra daylight in there to provide. Well, there's no viewing platform there anyway, so obscure glazing or something like, but yeah, it just marries the elevation up.
Councillor Newall.
Thank you, Chair. It was just, if I could just go back a bit slightly, when we were, the questions regarding the width of the road, that you will obviously have to take in account, if you accommodated a change in the width of the road, you would have to take into account, wouldn't you, access for emergency vehicles that may well be wider than a car.
Yeah, that's true. We would have to provide access for emergency vehicles. So, I mean, depending on what the nature of that is, would determine any sort of design solution to that. Yeah.
Can we just be clear, just on that point? Emergency vehicles to the proposed office block would still be able to access from the yard, wouldn't they?
Correct. Yes. So, if it was a fire, for instance, a fire engine could get through that part of the site, and most likely would do. Yes.
Just want members who weren't on site this morning to understand what it was we saw. Thank you.
Of course, yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. Any questions to officers? Councillor Sherrington.
Thank you, Chair. It's only, I'm just trying to get my head around the skip company being where it is and all these people with the houses who are objecting. And I'm just trying to work out how long, I've read the paperwork and I presume it was from 1994 that this particular skip site was there. And I was just wondering, was it before that or have I got that date right?
I think looking at the planning history on the report, the actual skip hire, also the waste transfer facility was granted in August 2000. I'm not sure.
I think if we look at page 139, the importation of inert waste materials was 1994.
That wasn't for.
That's for the wider site, Alex.
That's for
the bigger.
Yeah, I think that's for the 94 permission is for a wider site because it's about importation of waste or inert waste materials for the purpose of industrial development. So I think that's not part of the skip hire business. The skip hire business relates to 2000, the 56924. That's my interpretation.
Can I just say though that it's been an industrialist site since at least 1994. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Darvish.
Chair, just a quick one. The objector mentioned the increase in the amount of material being processed, which clearly we cannot control. But if that's substantially increased and the business needed additional hours, I'm assuming they would have to come back to planning?
Potentially, yes. It depends on what hours are granted under the 2000 permission. Yeah, but yeah, they will theoretically have to do that if there are restrictions.
Councillor Hornby.
Thank you, Chair. It's just in relation to the height and width restrictions on this road. Can Mr Allen just give us some indication as to what kind of condition could be put on that And is it something that we would have to be decided after this application has been approved or rejected?
I mean, members, if they wanted a kind of a width restriction at the entrance, could or delegate it to officers to discuss that with highways engineers as to the appropriate width. I mean, obviously the width on the plans is shown as 4.1 metres for the width, for the length of the road or the track. Obviously there'd be a pinch point at the entrance. But yeah, I think we'd have to be left to, and then we can refer it back to the chair and the vice chair for final approval.
Councillor Wright.
Could you explain, as on the original documents, page 147, it shows one office building with 9 parking spaces. Now, this late documents which just received, it shows 3 offices and no room for these parking spaces. Could you explain the 2 different pictures, please?
The proposal on page 147 is the current proposal. As everyone saw, who the steel portal frame is up. That was granted on the 2007 permission. The information on the late list is the layout for the 2007 permission. So on there, that's the building we're talking about that's been erected on site under the 2007 permission, and that is identical to what's shown on page 147 in terms of the siting. So the other 2 units would not be progressed with.
Just in response to Councillor Sherrington, I know this site was there before the houses, but these houses have been granted planning permission, and you've got to be respectful of the new residents. So.
We're taking questions at this stage. This is not a question, Councillor Wright. No, you're not, Councillor Sherrington. You're right in this instance. Thank you. Can I just ask a question to officers? 2 questions, actually. One, can you clarify, you report 18 objections. It was suggested by the objector that there were considerably more. Have we got any record of that, Mr. Allen? Question 1.
Well, we will have a record in our back office system, and when officers write reports, they're looking at the back office system when they write the report and summarising the number and detail of the specifics of concerns. So I mean, I would obviously there are 18 letters of objection plus 3 letters of comment. So there may be duplicates that people have written multiple times, or we can verify that, but obviously not at this stage.
Thank you. And secondly, condition 2, as proposed, if members are minded to accept, refers to surface water drainage. Can you confirm that condition would apply also to the access road, if the access road were to be surfaced and made up to appropriate standard?
I think there's an actual separate condition for the access road. Recollection. Condition 9. Prior to the development, hereby approved a scheme detailing how parts of the site to be used by vehicles are to be laid out, constructed, surface drained. So yeah, that would cover the track. Condition 9.
Thank you. The matter is now open for debate. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. First, I would like to bring to your attention the officer's comments on page 138. It's underneath the bullet points where it says Councillor Wright has objected to the proposal. I'd just like to confirm that this is a typographical error, as I did not object, but asked for this application to be heard at full planning. Now, Lostock Skip Hire has been operating from this site for over 20 years. They handle commercial and domestic waste. Since their time at this site, the area surrounding them has been developed. To the south and west of the site are industrial units, whilst housing has been built on the north and east sides. The housing consists of 2 large developments and extend up to Star Lane and the track, adjacent to the rear of Lostock Skip Hire. Lostock Skip Hire is located to the close to the M61. Opposite, on the other side of the motorway, a different skip hire recycling company is situated. As a highly developed area, the roads surrounding this site are often already congested. Specifically, Crown Lane at the junction with the A6, and further congestion is expected when the link road from Rivington Chase is completed. Local residents have already raised complaints in the past about dust and noise pollution issuing from the site. They are concerned that this application to erect a larger office building and the installation of a tarmac road to the rear of the site is in preparation for the company's expansion. Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. This application is probably simpler than it perhaps we're making out. The application is for the office block and the access road. The office block is in large part already approved by a prior application. So what we're concerned about here is primarily the access road. And given that we have conditions already built in covering the construction of the road and the drainage from the road, which seems to be a major issue, then my view is that after completion, conditions will actually be better for neighbouring houses and not worse. The risk of flooding will be considerably reduced if this road is properly drained. And the condition says that it's up to the council to approve that drainage scheme. So there's no reason why it shouldn't be a good scheme. A lot of the objections, as you might expect on a site of this nature, are against the operation of the site and not particularly against this application. And that's what we expect. We have several sites like this around the borough, and we've heard planning applications similar to this in the past, and we always get objections about the operation. Councillor Wright mentions that since the Lostock skip hire been here for 20 years, I think you said, and since then houses have been built. Well, I have sympathy with the householders, but the skip site was there first, and buyers of houses adjacent to a skip yard should be aware that, you know, that's what they're buying. So I honestly struggle to see any reasons to refuse this application, and I really absolutely believe that the situation will be improved. So far as the restricted use of the road is concerned, I'm not keen on reducing the width of it, because there may very well be an emergency situation at some point where access for a large vehicle is needed. I'd be comfortable with a height restriction. A height restriction can be removed if needed, if necessary for an emergency. But other than that, I'm quite happy to move approval, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hornby.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite happy to second approval on this application. I think Mr Grant brought some valid objections to this application, and quite rightly so. But I think that with regard to the drainage, as Councillor Allen and Councillor Wright has mentioned, it will improve that situation and should make it a lot better. And if it doesn't, because of those conditions, we can bring them back and make them put it right. With regard to the access, I think it was important that we discuss that. It is important that HGVs cannot go through that. With regard to what Councillor Allen said, with regard to not wanting a width restriction on that, I think it is paramount that we do it. As the Chairman has already said, there is still access to that site via the main area where the HGVs will go, and they can get in through that way. Perhaps a compromise might be that there is a removable stump in the middle that can either go up or down or can be removed. That would address that situation and create a width restriction preventing HGVs from going through that, and maybe our planning officers can look at that again if we defer that part of it for approval. But other than that, I think the issues have been addressed. It is an application just for the office side of it. We've addressed everything that we can address on it, and the skip hire company has been there many, many years, so I'm happy to second approval on this application.
Thank you, Chair. I do have some sympathy with the people who live around there. However, this is a protected employment site, and also it's been there a very long time. But I do have, the reason I have sympathy with this is because in my ward I've actually had places that have had disgusting sorts of things that they've been doing that has been before planning permissions ever started. So they sort of did things that was not appropriate. However, I do think with this site, although they've finished up with all the houses around it, but it was industrial to start with, I do think they are trying very hard to get it right. And I think what they're doing regarding this road is only going to improve their lives, not actually make their lives worse. And at the end of the day, this is the main thing that we're looking at, is that road. And I don't think it should have a change in its width. I think it should just be the way that it's been proposed to be done. And I think that it will be an advantage to the people who live around there rather than a disadvantage. So I will be glad it's been seconded, but I will go in for approval. Thank you.
No further comment. It's been moved and seconded approval. Therefore, take a vote.
Sure.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I'm trying to avoid speaking because I'm full of a cold.
I knew you wouldn't.
I can't help myself. We have a difference of opinion. Councillor Wright and Hornby talking about a width restriction. Councillor Allen, Sheraton saying they don't think there should be. Are you proposing to take a separate vote on that as a condition?
I thought that was going to come back. Officers would discuss and come back to Chairman and Vice Chairman to agree.
Okay.
To expedite matters.
Councillor Abdullah, Councillor Allen, Councillor Ayub, Councillor Bullock, Councillor Darvish, Councillor Dean, Councillor Hayes, Councillor Hornby, Councillor Morgan, Councillor Newell, Councillor Peel, Councillor Radcliffe, Councillor Sanders, Councillor Sherrington, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Wright.
That is approved. Thank you. We come then to application on page 4, land at Crescent Road, Linwood Avenue, number 4459. Mr. Mansell, is it yours?
Thank you, Chair. This application was deferred by members at their meeting back in February, primarily over concerns that this residential development would raise the flood risk category of the nearby Dorhay reservoirs, placing burdens on the angling club there that they could not afford. We're pleased to be able to tell members that the applicant has addressed this issue in full by commissioning a dam breach analysis report that makes recommendations for works in and around the site and the reservoir itself. Those include slightly raising the floor of some of the plots of the dwellings, 150 mil to 650 mil, forming a shallow depth concrete beam on top of the mound that splits the two Dorhay Brook Valley basins, reinforcing the embankment of the reservoir in order to protect the embankment from erosion, and also cleaning out the Ashby Close culvert. Other than the works to the culvert, which are responsibility of Network Rail, all costs of the works to Dorhay Reservoir would be borne by the applicant. Most importantly though, members, the dam breach analysis report has been fully assessed by the Environment Agency, who now have no further concerns over the proposal, provided that these works are carried out. So the view of the Environment Agency is if these works are carried out and the residential development happens, that will not in any way affect the risk category of Dorhay Reservoir, just to be clear on that point.
As some of the works involve land not in the applicant's control, i.e. at Dorhay Reservoirs itself, we intend to secure these works via a Section 106 agreement. Just turning to the issue of viability, which was raised by members last time, we remain of the view that it's very likely that this development cannot sustain planning contributions without becoming unviable. This is a difficult site to develop with a number of abnormal or unusual costs to the developer, not least the works now necessary to ensure that the flood risk category of the Dorhay Reservoirs doesn't change. We do recognise members' concerns in this regard, and we also take the view that estimating the abnormal costs of a development such as this prior to any work actually starting is perhaps more of an art than a science. We therefore consider it prudent that a clawback arrangement be entered into so that viability can be more rigorously tested at a later date once the actual real costs of the development are understood in full. At the last meeting, members also referred to the green corridor that runs through the site from Freshfield Avenue area, generally follows the line of Dorhay Brook. We just want to be clear that the green corridor is completely severed to the east by the significantly raised levels of the existing residential development of Ashby Close and the embankment of the Bolton to Manchester railway line. For this reason, Greater Manchester Ecology Unit consider that the development would not result in the loss of the entire corridor, it would slightly narrow it. We think it's important to note that a green corridor is not like an area of biological importance, it's a line. The line follows Dorhay Brook and the brook itself remains unchanged. Greater Manchester Ecology Unit also consider that the proposed management of the remainder of the woodland will offer compensation for any narrowing of the green corridor, shall we say. For these reasons, we consider the development to comply in full with the relevant policies, and we recommend that members delegate the decision back to officers to allow the Section 106 agreement to be signed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have no object to this application. A supporter, Mr. Colin Leith.
Thank you, Chair.
Sir, to address the meeting and then take any questions that members may have.
Thank you. Just to really reinforce the work that's been done in the last 6 months in particular, the applicant commissioned the Environment Agency's approved reservoir engineer to assess the flood risk that would be proposed. Proposed development would be in a worst-case flood scenario. The assessment included modelling the entire valley upstream of the development to appraise the catchment area of both reservoirs. The construction, volume, capacity and the condition of the two reservoirs was also assessed. A further topographical survey was carried out of the valley side to the south of the development site itself to assess its capacity, and the condition surveys was also carried out on the two culverts that connect Dorhay Brook, including the one under Ashby Close downstream of the site. This took 6 months of work and obviously at considerable cost. However, what this in-depth analysis proved was that only very minor mitigation measures were required to remove the flood risk, including raising the finished floor levels and the rear gardens of only some of the proposed properties, insertion of ground protection measures adjoining the site to stabilise the ground, including the short concrete beam to create a stable lip, and for Network Rail to clean out their culvert below their railway line in line with their legal obligations. The Environment Agency then confirmed in writing that they were therefore satisfied that the flood risk assessment had been carried out thoroughly and to their satisfaction. The classification of the two reservoirs would not change. The mitigation measures proposed were also satisfactory, concluded therefore that no objection to the development. I hope therefore that this gives you the reassurance that the proposed development has no residual flood risks, is therefore very much deliverable, and that you can support the application for what is much needed family housing in this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions, Councillor Sherrington?
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered, what are you doing to protect the wildlife corridor while the building is going on? Because quite simply, things like, for instance, hedgehogs, they actually do about 3 or 4 miles a night walking. So I just wondered, you know, I'm just worried about something happening to them while the building is going on. So I just wondered what kind of thing that you're going to do to create a barrier there so that there's no chance of them slipping onto the building site? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, a full ecological survey was carried out of the site, as was an arboricultural survey. So we know exactly what's on the ground, both the flora and the fauna. And there's a strategy in place that forms part of this application that is proposed to remove that risk that you've just described. So the protection of the corridor will be through root protection areas of the trees, so they will all be screened off during the construction process, and anything with regards to any wildlife will also be protected in line with the report that's been submitted as part of the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Newall.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just bring your attention, please, to paragraph 42. And there's a comment there from GMEU regarding, I'll read it to you and then it's probably easier. Compensation for the loss of woodland. It is proposed to manage other areas of woodland in the wider area, and a woodland management plan has been submitted with the application. It is, however, unclear on the delivery mechanism and funding for this plan. Its timescale and review process, this matter requires clarification. Could you supply a little bit of clarification about that, please?
Thank you. Within the development proposal, we're aware the full tree survey, arboricultural survey, was carried out of the woodland, and a management plan has been put in place, and funding will be put in place to ensure that the woodland is taken up to a manageable level. All the ground cover and scrub and invasive species will be removed in line with recommendations, and therefore it becomes a far more manageable area to maintain. And then a figure has been put aside to maintain that woodland, and a management company will be put in place to make sure that is implemented.
Councillor Hornby.
Thank you, Chair. As you will know, when it came before committee last time, the main concern was from the angles with regard to this, and I thank you for picking up the costs with regard to everything that's needed to be done there. Can we just have a little bit of assurance that if this application is approved and the development starts, that the anglers will not be affected? They'll still be able to use the reservoir and carry on fishing virtually undisturbed throughout the process?
Thank you. Yes, so during the construction process, you mean? Yes. Yes, so the access to the reservoir will be protected during the construction process. And beyond that, because of the Environment Agency's recognition that the categorisation of the reservoir doesn't change, then there's no residual costs or responsibilities for the anglers beyond what they've got just now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. Many members in the room will be aware that one of the chief causes of localised flooding in situations like this is blocked culverts. And certainly in my ward, it's a major problem. Now, this culvert in Doe Hay is the responsibility of Network Rail. So it's up to them to maintain it. What I'm interested in is there anything that you as a developer can do to make sure that Network Rail do keep it clear?
Thank you. We have discussed this. In fact, it was the Environment Agency who brought it to our attention that it is the legal responsibility of Network Rail to maintain their own culvert. So they've carried out that survey and they've said it's just the mouth, it's the tail end of the reservoir that just needs a bit of clearing out. So it's a relatively minor piece of work. They then have an obligation to maintain that as they do just now. But we have also, for further upstream, for the part below our site, we have proposed to put a new set of steps down to the culvert mouth to aid the regular inspection and clearing out of any debris that falls within that culvert. So there are mitigation measures being put in place. Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions. Thank you very much. Can you return to your seat? Matter is now open for debate. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. I have read this comprehensive report thoroughly. This application was deferred at the last committee meeting in February due to concerns raised over future flood risk from the neighbouring Dohe Reservoir. The dam breach analysis report submitted by the applicant addresses the flood risk issue and makes the recommendation for work to be carried out, which includes raising the flow level. In the officer report on the paragraph 33-34, it states that after the work the applicant has mentioned has been carried out, the Environment Agency and National Reservoir Safety Function has no further concerns. I have lived around the proposed site for over 4 decades. Over the years, this land has been neglected, used for landfillings, and I received complaints of fly tipping, Japanese nutweeds, antisocial activities around there. A number of local residents have raised concerns over the proposed development on their living conditions, including loss of lights and privacy. However, the proposed layout has been amended to accommodate these concerns. According to AMR reports, we as a council are continuously under-delivering of new housing against the targets. Furthermore, there have been no objections from the highway graded with highly developed area, and opportunities for the delivery of new housing are subsequently limited with the current high demand for the housing. On the balance, I would like to move it for approval. I think it's going to be improvement of the area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hornby.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second approval on this application. I think the applicant has done a good job with regard to addressing the concerns that this committee had. There are many occasions when we ask an applicant to go away and come back with a revised plan on address issues that we've got, and they come back with virtually the same thing that they had before, but this applicant has addressed these issues. Many members will have received last time plenty of objections, especially from the anglers on email. I don't think we've received any this time, and I certainly haven't. And I think that's testament to the fact that the issues have been addressed. My only concern is, like I said, there's no section 106 on this, but I would like further clarification as the development progresses, so that if we have any opportunity, because the site doesn't cost as much to develop, that we try and claw some section 106 monies in. But the site itself looks good. It's in a beautiful area, Dohe, around that area of Farmworth and Harper Green area. And I welcome this, and like I said, thank the applicant for listening to what this committee has said. So I'm quite happy to second approval on this application.
Thank you, Councillor Newall.
Thank you, Chair. There's been a lot of attention paid to the points that were raised last time, but there is one point that was raised last time that doesn't seem to have been addressed, and that was regarding the level of off-road parking provision. And paragraph 52 addresses this, where it says it appears to fall below the council's residential parking standards, and the same mitigation that was used last time is still being used, which is the site is adjacent to the 501 bus route, which would provide an element of justification for relaxation of the standards. And I have to say, I said it last time and I will say it again, I don't think proximity to a bus stop is a good enough reason to relax standards of off-parking provision. So that is one area that I feel hasn't been addressed. Thank you.
Councillor Allen.
Thanks, Chair. Happy to support approval of this application. The applicant has taken steps to address some of our concerns about flooding. I am concerned that Network Rail are not the best in the world at keeping their word on these things, but that's perhaps a different issue. Just one point, really carrying on from Councillor Newall's discussion. Condition 22 says that garages should be kept available at all times for use of parking. I thought we'd given up on this some years ago. I know I've raised it, and other members have raised it many times. It is completely and utterly unenforceable. And what I'd much rather see is a condition that removed permitted development rights for the conversion of garages into living accommodation. That at least would give us some chance of addressing the shortfall in parking. So I am concerned that we're still using that condition, Chair. But apart from that, I'll support it.
Yeah, just following on from what Councillor Allen said, I think that is a good, valid point, and I just would appreciate if officers would make a note of that and that we take that up at the next PDG for planning.
Thank you. Point noted. No further comments. It's therefore been proposed and seconded approval. Take the vote, please.
Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Allen. Councillor Ayub. Councillor Bullock. Councillor Darvish. Councillor Dean. Councillor Hayes. Councillor Hornby. Councillor Morgan. Councillor Newell. Councillor Peel. Councillor Radcliffe. Councillor Sanders. Councillor Sherrington. Councillor Walsh. Councillor Wright.
That application is approved. The next item we will take is on page 106, application 6663, Bolton Muslim Girls' School.
Thank you, Chair. Just like to draw members' attention to the late list, about halfway within. We've received amended location plan which excludes the small car park off High Street, which was previously included within the red edge. The agent has also clarified that the mill building, whilst viewed from Swan Lane, is actually 4 stories, and the proposed extension, which obviously would form the access to the upper floors of the mill, would be 5 stories rather than 4 stories. Officers consider that the analysis within the report in terms of the proposed design, impact of the proposed extension, the character and appearance of the area still remain accurate, is acceptable form of development. The key concern, as members will be aware from visiting the site this morning and from reading the report, is the impacts on the adjoining highway network. In terms of the late list, the applicant has put forward an additional solution or some sort of mitigation as a result of consultation with local residents. The applicant is now proposing for 2-year groups, that's approximately 240 children, to exit the school on High Street 3 times a week, that being Monday, Tuesday and Thursday. Since Wednesday and Friday, the school finishes early. The aim of that is to mitigate pupils leaving the school onto Swan Lane, especially when the madrasa within the existing mill building is in use. Turning back to the main report, two key aspects of the proposal are the erection of the extension, which I said is acceptable, and the key issue of the highways impact. As part of the application, the applicant has submitted a transport assessment and a travel plan to support the proposal. The key points raised within that are that school access will remain on Swan Lane. The school aims to provide cycle storage within the school, including change and shower facilities. It already has a use of an existing drop-off facility on Swan Lane, and that will remain in use. In addition, duty staff will supervise traffic at the beginning and end of day of the school. The Council's highways engineer has concluded that based on the proposed increase in pupils, that's 150 pupils over a 5-year period, 30 pupils per year, they consider the proposal would have a minimal impact on the highway capacity. The school has explored measures which are outlined within the report and within the late list, and it is considered these would reduce conflicts with the operation of the madrasa on Swan Lane and help generally ease congestion in and around the area. Subject to the mitigation measures outlined above, officers consider the proposal complies with policy and is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. We have an objector to this application, Mr. Kohler. Right, come forward, please. Thank you. You have 3 minutes to address the committee and then take any questions.
Can I just pass on these copies to the officers, please?
Take late representation of this nature. You're here to speak to us, but we will note
I'm
what you...
really speaking so you can go through with me, actually. That's all. You could just pass on the details. Thank you. Okay, right. Thank you. Dear Chairman, Vice Chairman and members of the Planning Committee, thank you for giving me this opportunity to address you. After a number of meetings with BMGS, we concluded with the following points, which have been shared with BMGS a few days ago. But to date, we have had no response, hence I am here addressing you. We are trying our utmost to be fair and come up with a balanced approach, but our concerns have fallen on deaf ears. We rely on this committee to find a positive outcome for all. Following our meeting on Friday 29th November at 8:15 between the representatives of the local residents and BMGS Bolton Muslim Girls School, the BMWT Bolton Muslim Welfare Trust, BMGS responded to the residents' suggestion. We, the residents, met to discuss the response and would therefore like to confirm that if the following points become part of the conditions of the planning application, we, the residents, are happy to support the application. 1. High Street entrance to be established for students who are dropped off in cars, 3-year groups for students years 9, 10 and 11. 2. Swan Lane entrance to be used by parents who drop off students in cars for year 7 and 8-year groups. Children walking to and from school can use the entrances Swan Lane or High Street. These points will help ease the traffic jam congestion and health and safety issues currently faced by students, medical centre and residents. 4. The above points 1 and 2 to be added to the school's admission policy and changes to be included in the current school policy and effective once the necessary works have taken place and health and safety approval, and all parents to adopt during the enrollment process. Once this becomes a part of school policy, the school can therefore enforce it legally and hold irresponsible parents to task. 5. The school to add signage at the entrance of both points Swan Lane and High Street based on points 1 and 2 above, so that the parents are clearly aware of where to pick the children up from. The school to deploy 3 traffic wardens, 1 on the High Street and 2 on Swan Lane entrance. Assuming these points are added to the planning application, we are happy to support the school and withdraw our objections. Please be mindful that we support the school and its efforts to expand its teaching provision, but to have one access and entry point for a further 150 students is a major health and safety issue for the school, medical centre and the residents, which cannot be compromised or overlooked in any way or form. Thank you.
Can I make it absolutely clear that what was circulated to members, the document that has been circulated, is word for word what has just been read?
That's correct.
It is not any new evidence or information. And it was circulated to me, the Vice Chairman officers, yesterday. So there is nothing new in what has been circulated to members. I want all parties to be clear that that is the situation. Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Hayes, and then Councillor Hornby.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You mentioned we quite a lot. Are you speaking on behalf of all the objectors, can I ask? That's the first question. And the second one is, have you actually discussed these conditions for support with the applicant?
Yes, I do represent all objections of the residents, and we have discussed these as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just, it was similar. I was just concerned that the majority of what you're requesting is not planning consideration, and this committee can't look at that. I'm just wondering, again, where have you circulated this other than here?
Nowhere else, just between our members when we had a meeting, the residents, and just to the planning officer.
Councillor Darvesh.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering whether you've actually seen the late sheet, the supplementary information which was given to committee today, because I think some of the stuff you've actually mentioned on there, some of it, is actually on the late sheet, which is a facility to use High Street entrance as well. Have you seen the late sheet?
I've not seen the late shift, no.
So we now have a supporter for the application. Helen Andrea Palmer, please.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. You've got 3 minutes and then questions.
Thank you. BMGS is an Ofsted outstanding school. It has been first in the borough for the last 4 years and 15th nationally currently for Progress 8. It has a proven track record in academic excellence. BMGS is providing outstanding education to girls from a deprived and disadvantaged background. BMGS was previously an independent and then a voluntary aided school, and thus has had comparatively minimal capital investment in estate and buildings. The proposed project will allow the school to broaden their curriculum offer with DT and drama. The school is significantly oversubscribed. In 2019-20, this amounted to 286 applications for 120 places, i.e. 238% oversubscribed. The expansion of the school will support the LEA's efforts to meet demands for secondary school places in the borough. BMGS will provide 150 new places over the next 5 years. There will be a local shortage of places if the expansion doesn't go ahead. Expansion of the school will create new net additional employment. The new admission policy and school travel plan allows children living nearest to the school to secure places at the school, thus fewer car journeys, which will ease the current situation. The school has updated its travel plan to ensure there is a concerted effort to reduce the volume of cars. We have tried to address the feedback from the public consultation in September and have submitted a draft proposal for an additional pick-up point for 2-year groups at High Street, and if the High Street side is subject to a condition for the approval of the scheme. SLT supervision during pick-up and drop-off will be further supported by deployment of a steward to ease drop-off and pick-up of students on both ends, the High Street and Swan Lane, thus helping to reduce congestion further. BMGS is in the process of establishing a working group comprising of members from school staff, resident representatives and Bolton Muslim Welfare Trust to work together and meet regularly to address any traffic issues arising. The project build is scheduled to start in January. If this is delayed, the school and the borough risk losing £2.2 million of investment awarded by the DFE, and also risk delay to the project completing in time for the 2020-21 academic year. The BMGS vision is success for all. Our learners deserve quality provisions that do not hinder them to this aim. In conclusion, this project presents an excellent opportunity to provide the facilities required that will expand the educational prospects for both current and future pupils. We are aware of the concerns raised and have tried our utmost to address these in the best manner possible. Any delay and risk of not progressing with the project would be a significant loss to the school and the community it serves. Please. Thank you. Sorry.
Yes, thank you, Chair. A little bit confused about numbers. It's a very significantly oversubscribed school. As I understand the report, you're about 150 pupils over your theoretical maximum. Would in fact this so-called expansion mean any more pupils, or would you actually just be catering for the number of pupils that are already there?
We will be catering for more pupils, but it will certainly help with our current very cramped conditions that we manage very well. But as you rightly say, we have got our pan is 120 and the site currently isn't big enough for that number. So it's a bit of both.
Councillor Darvish.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just two questions, really. You mentioned the possibility of losing this funding bid. So why is this application coming December? And also, in terms of the proposal that you've come up with, which is using the High Street entrance, how do you come up with the exact figures, which is you can accommodate 2-year groups 3 times a week, not in the morning, but just in the afternoon? How do you work that out? How, you know, please.
I can certainly answer the second question in that in the morning our site is open to learners from 7:30 and it's a drip feed of learners coming in over the course of an hour and well, around about an hour. So it hasn't got the same impact on Swan Lane at that time. We do have staff who are at the gate in the morning to be able to help traffic to keep moving as they're dropping off. The reason that we have looked to High Street with the 2-year groups is because, as you're probably aware, that High Street is a very busy road and we don't think that it's suitable with regard to health and safety to release all of our learners through that exit, which is why we'd have 3-year groups going out from Swan Lane and 2-year groups going out from High Street to try to take on board what the objections have been with regard to the difficulty at the end of the school day.
I'll just come back and do the first question in terms of how late it was, and I've just got one more question as well.
Thank you. Councillor Darvish.
Sorry. I'm advised that the application came in on the 6th of August and because we've now come to committee, that's the reason why we're now in December.
Just one more question. How are you able to
we have a visitors car park on the site that it's the staff predominantly that we visit an area where have an area where could live. We want to be trying to discourage that because as a school we want to promote to school. And currently on the site, businesses that are in the middle are kind of segregated. When we resurface the car, that would become much clearer. So it would be clear which area was for the school and which area was for the mill.
Mention what the groups will be. And some indication as to the numbers.
have 120 learners, 40 learners leaving by the high street, 3 groups leaving by we are increasing, as you an additional 30 each year over the next 5 years. We haven't made a decision over which year groups would be leaving by which exit at this moment in time, but it would definitely be 2 year groups that would be going out of the High Street exit. In regard to how many cars would be involved in that, we believe that approximately 40% of our parents use car to bring their daughter to school. But as we've said, we would want to keep enforcing the idea that we would prefer for them to be walking to school or car sharing. And also with our new admissions policy, the learners that would be coming to our school would be more local to us. So there'd be no reason for them not to walk.
Thank you. Further questions? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Hello. I'd just like to ask regarding what the objectors mentioned and what you've just talked about having it enforced, putting into like a school agreement plan where parents have to abide by the certain rules that the school put out regarding dropping off, picking off, which entrance they use. Would you consider putting that into like a parent school agreement so that way you could enforce it? Would you look into that? Sorry.
According to the Schools Admission Code 2014, it does not allow for conditions such as entry points to be attached to the admissions policy. So we would not be able to make that part of our admissions policy. What we would be doing is making sure that all learners, all parents knew which which exit point they would be expected to go to, either High Street or Swan Lane.
Thank you very much. No further questions? Thank you. Can you resume your seats, please? The matter is now open for debate. Abdullah.
Okay. Just going to read off these. Thank you, Chair. Dear members, BMGS is in the Rumworth ward. As a councillor of Rumworth, a ward with increasing demand for school places, I welcome the expansion and increase of pupil intake at BMGS, and I'm very also glad to hear of an increase of DT and drama to be added to the curriculum. At the school's public consultation regarding such expansion, nearby local residents had expressed their thoughts as well. They too understand the need for expansion and do not oppose such. However, they feel that the present road infrastructure cannot cope with traffic as it is. There have been requests made by residents to BMGS to consider planning a second exit entry point to the High Street side. I acknowledge that this has been mentioned now in the late notes. Presently, that there is only one exit point for the 600 children that go there right now. The surrounding area consists of multiple rows of terrace properties and a medical centre directly opposite the single entry point that they have. This point is very near to the main road, St Helens Road, along such which are many shops. As members may appreciate, the road outside the school, Swan Lane, has multiple users: residents, medical surgery users, shoppers, as well as the school's parents, staff, etc., visitors, and people just travelling through. The build-up of traffic on Swan Lane often causes gridlock, thus leading to congestion on St Helens Road. The report states that the proposal would not exacerbate existing highway issues. Dear members, it says exacerbate, meaning not to make a presently bad situation worse. It states that 30 children plus 2 staff increase per year would be marginal. Cumulatively, over a 5-year period, this marginal effect turns into a significant one. In the interest of public safety of the children, parents, medical surgery, as well as the extra users, as mentioned before, a second exit entry point is much needed. To conclude, I welcome the much needed school expansion and would like to formally move this application for approval. It is good to hear the school is considering a second point, though I would like this to be moved for approval with conditions being attached for the requirement of the second entry-exit point at the side of High Street School, at the site of High Street, to be for the drop-off and pick-up, not as just for the pick-up as suggested in the late notes. Thank you. 5 days a week as well, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, members, I've absolutely no hesitation in seconding approval of this application. The extension of such an exceptional school, a school when it comes to state-funded schools is jewel in Bolton's crown. They have performed extremely well over the years, and the young ladies in Bolton that have had an opportunity to study there have benefited from that, and as a town we will see the benefits of that as well. Now, when it comes to pressure on school spaces, that particular area is the key area where the pressure is. So you get Romworth, Great Lever, and other parts of that particular area is where we know as the relevant department would say is where the pressure is. So an expansion of a school in that area for me is wholly welcomed. And what I would like to say about, I do understand the issues of highways and traffic, but that is with every single school in Bolton, every single primary school in the borough, every single secondary school in the borough has that problem. There is no school in our borough that does not have that problem. When it comes to the admission policy, I welcome that because I think that will help the issue over the years, in years to come, because the initial policy, which I haven't personally always agreed with, because it's looked at, I know it's not a planning issue, but I do want to mention this, it's not always looked at, it's looked at being a member of a particular madrasa to earn extra points to get into that school. Well, I welcome the fact that all children will be able to apply for that regardless of which madrasa they go to. So at the moment, you've got a lot of children that go to that school from the likes of Ladybridge, Lostock, and other parts of Bolton, including Falmouth. But with the new policy, as it should be, it's going to look at where you live in the proximity. So that will mean from the 2021 intake, more children or more young girls will have the opportunity to go from a surrounding area. So what we're looking at is a high quality education for a group of young people, young girls that live in the most deprived area of Bolton. Like I said, I agree, I welcome the staggered closing times and the start times as well in the morning, starting at 7:30. I think that helps with the issue. The travel plan, I think the consultation that's taken place with the community is quite late on in the day. I think had that have been done earlier, these issues would have been sorted out. Like I said, you know, all schools have the issue. We've had a school in Bolton this morning where police have had to turn up to move parents on when they've been parked on zigzags outside of school. So, you know, that just proves that there is an issue. But I welcome the consultation. It was a bit late, but nevertheless, I think the school has made strides in achieving that. And like I said, I'm happy to move approval. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Sherrington.
Thank you, Chair. Bolton Muslim Girls' School has been a wonderful success in Bolton, and all praise to the staff and the children who've done that. However, the difficulty with the school is the fact that it's an old building. It was never designed to be a school, and also it's in probably one of the most beautiful areas that an urban area in the town. And I know that as far as Small Lane's concerned, we have had actions on Small Lane, different things being turned down because of the traffic situation. So we have to take that consideration. However, I do agree with Councillor that if the traffic was dealt with regarding the school in a different way, there is a possibility that there won't be that impact on the highways the same. And at the end of the day, the school is where it is, and there's nothing we can do about that, because therefore it's terribly successful and it should remain where it is at the moment. However, I think if they talk about expansion in the future, I don't think you can go over 5-storey, and I certainly don't think that they'll have any land left that they can expand on. So at that stage, I think they'd probably have to look at a brand new site. But we are where we are. I would like to second the changes that Councillor Abdullah said about putting on different restrictions, and I think that should be done. And I will second it. Well, it's already been seconded, but I will second it with those proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think most of it's been said, but I can't stress how important that the expansion of this school list with regards to the authorities' requirements for places moving forward over the next few years is a key element of that proposal. So I can't stress that strong enough. And I think Councillor Dean hit it on the head. This school experiences the same traffic problems as we all do around the borough. And I take my hat off to the school for trying to address some of those problems with the residents, and the residents having that positive dialogue with the school. So I'm more than happy to support the application.
Yes, Chair. I'm also very happy to support. I've got the pleasure of living next door to a secondary school, so I know the problems firsthand. This is a very successful school, I would say, despite the premises in many ways, because it's not easier to do what they've done in a new building. What they've actually done in those premises is nothing short of remarkable. Strictly, probably not planning concerns, but we are very short of places, so I'm very, very happy that this should go ahead.
Councillor Darvish.
I agree with Councillor Dean and Councillor Morgan in terms of the issues that every single council actually faces at the bottleneck periods, drop off and pick up at every single school in their ward, and we've all dealt with them issues. For 20 minutes it is chaos outside every single school that is in your ward. But this is just a little bit different, and it's an opportunity for me to just mention a couple of things. When you look at the aerial view here, there was a number of sort of applications very close to the school Swan Lane, which I objected to simply because I was very conscious, very much aware of the issues of parking. One of them was the medical centre when they wanted an extension. It was losing car parking spaces. I just felt that was just too much happening, but it got approved. There's also a building here that's bottom right of the picture with a gap in it. That building with that car park, that's got planning permission as well for another building there, so you lose more car parking spaces there. The problems with Swan Lane with that little drop-off facility is only successful because of the BMGS staff that actually come outside and guide the traffic and wave it through, because I had to drop my daughter off, so I know very well the amount of work that actually goes on there with the staff to make sure everything is safe. Now, health and safety is our priority. We, as councillors, are desperate for school places in our wards, and that is why the Crompton ward councillors were very happy when the Olive School came into play in Crompton. Yeah, we was very supportive of the school, but health and safety did come first. It was in the wrong location. We kept coming back to planning committee to tell them it's the wrong location. I think they found an alternative place now. So for us, getting that school in there at the right time is very important, and we don't want to lose this funding. I think the BMGS have actually listened to the concerns of the residents, and they come up with another solution on High Street, which the ward councillors are supportive of. And I do feel a bit like we're actually at hostage, left simply because January could be the deadline in terms of the funding. Therefore, I am proposing we approve this application subject to the chair, vice chair, and ward councillors just thrashing out that situation on High Street in terms of the optimum way to manage the traffic, manage the pupils exiting High Street, possibly at both ends of the day. And that way, the application still gets approved with a view to finding a solution which everybody can be happy with, the residents can be happy with as well. So that's what I'm for moving.
Thank you, Councillor Darvish. Clearly your experience as previous Vice Chairman stood you in good stead. That's the very issue that the Vice Chairman and I just discussed with Mr Whittingham, that if members are managed to approve it, subject to final agreement on the details of the traffic management to be implemented. Is the proposer prepared to accept that as a reasonable way forward? Are you happy with that way forward? Seconder, thank you. Therefore, it is proposed that it be approved, subject to final agreement of traffic management being agreed by Chairman and Vice Chairman in consultation with Ward Councillors.
Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Allen. Councillor Ayub. Councillor Bullock. Councillor Darvish. Councillor Dean. Councillor Hayes. Councillor Hornby. Councillor Morgan. Councillor Newell. Councillor Peel. Councillor Radcliffe. Councillor Sanders. Councillor Sherrington. Councillor Walsh. Councillor Wright. It's approved.
That application is approved with the conditions. Thank you. We turn now to page 54 in the bundle, Higher Critchley Fold Barn. Details at page 54. Application, 6257.
Thank you, Chair. The application site as a planning history as set out on page 71 of the agenda. There is a current planning appeal lodged against the refusal in March of this year. The committee report and the late list provide clarification updates from the application determined in March. In addition to that, I've had an email today with a bit of additional clarification on the use of the outdoor learning area. So that references the 4 schools who've provided written support, the use of the outdoor learning area, the amount of the use of the outdoor learning area, and it focuses on up to 450 safe visits per year that would have no traffic issues, ample parking and manoeuvring, and could be split between either the 27 schools offered or other schools as the council may deem to benefit the most. I think the late list and the references that officers have made is that there could be a condition attached to that to cover that anyway. The site is within the green belt, and the report highlights that the development proposed is inappropriate development and harm by reason of inappropriate by impact to the openness or visual impact, and those are 2 separate tests, should be afforded significant weight. The decision maker, which is the committee in this instance, must reach a conclusion based on the evidence before them as to what the very special circumstances are and whether those exist individually and what the individual and cumulative weight to be attached to each of those are, and then come to an overall conclusion based on all of the very special circumstances that the decision maker considers as to whether that outweighs the harm to the green belt. One very special circumstance put forward to be tested against paragraph 79, used to be paragraph 54, is that the design is of exceptional quality, i.e. truly outstanding or innovative. I mean, this is covered in paragraphs 28 to 48 of the report. The dwelling has been through a number of design reviews, and it's been accepted through those design reviews that the building is of high quality, is well thought out, and the landscaping does provide a unique approach on this site, and the Forest School is also a unique addition. The design, layout and sustainable credentials of the scheme do support the narrative that's proposed and is an appropriate design response. But there's limitations to the support from the design review in terms of how unique or truly outstanding or innovative the scheme is. Paragraph 79 alone, if members disagree with officers, does not in itself justify new development in the Greenbelt. So other very special circumstances need to exist. The outdoor learning opportunity is supported by a number of schools, as I've detailed on the verbally on the update, and is supported by academic reports and backed up by a Section 106 agreement to secure its use in the future. Whilst there is a highway concern about unrestricted highway use, it's felt that frequency can be managed by condition. This element of the scheme is a positive aspect that would attract weight. The Lapwing Conservation Area would be over and above the biodiversity net gain approach that's expected, and biodiversity net gain is to be progressed in the future by a change to an Act of Parliament. And so this would be a positive aspect, again, of the scheme that would attract weight. Based on the balancing exercise that officers have to go through, and members will have to go through, the recommendation is based on the fact that the positives of the scheme, which I've identified, do not outweigh the negatives in terms of the development as a whole and the impact of harm to openness and visual amenity in the Greenbelt. The application is recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The first speaker on this one is Councillor Muslim, Ward Councillor. Can you come to the front bench, please, Councillor Muslim? You have 5 minutes to address committee. Paul, can you...
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to start by saying that I sit here on behalf of all 3 of the Bromley Cross councillors in support of this application. What the committee has before itself today is an outstanding and innovative dwelling, which is something that is not as frequent as it could be, perhaps, at committee. I openly acknowledge that any encroachment into the Greenbelt is of concern. However, I feel this proposed application meets the exceptional criteria. It is, in fact, an application that only takes up 3% of the overall site, and the proposed site is already situated between 2 properties. And it really is an opportunity to create an environmentally friendly family home that serves the needs of the community and wider environment. I find it encouraging that Places Matter, the organisation that Bolton Council has chosen to use as the body to substantiate the design proposals in this council's regeneration programme, has already deemed the design of the house to be unique as reported in the papers. And the design of the house has been vetted on numerous occasions by River. And it will also sit into the side of the hill, obscuring most of it from view, particularly from the road. And I think these points alone speak to how the dwelling will be unlike anything that's come before. Now, the proposed house is designed to be carbon neutral, built against the hillside to maximise thermal mass and reduce heat loss and gain. In addition, it will feature solar thermal PV panels, ground source heat pumps, air source heat pumps, a biomass boiler, a controlled ventilation MHRV, a rainwater management system, and a natural pool water filtering system. Now, with this property, what we are seeing is a unique opportunity to provide a special learning environment for school children across the north of the borough, at least. The outdoor learning area for schools has garnered support from at least 4 local schools in the area, so that's Edgerton Primary, Walmsley Primary, the Oaks and St John's. However, as been referenced already, I think there is scope for many other local schools to benefit from this proposed application. And that benefit to the children of the area is truly undeniable, and to prevent this application will mean that we are doing a disservice to these children right at the time when we are choosing to focus many of our efforts on improving our environment and highlighting its importance. And in terms of size, this part will encompass 53% of the overall site. And I'm in no doubt that it would support the government's priority of educating children about nature through things like forest schools. The site itself will include wildflower meadows and a wildlife conservation area for lapwings, and that is fully supported by the Wildlife Trust and UCL Institute of Education Professor Michael Rees. And there is a commitment from the applicant to lease this land for a period of 99 years and undertake all legal transactions necessary. And I believe this is unprecedented and shows the willing to do the right thing and for the benefit of everybody. And naturally, this will mean that the land cannot be developed on any further. And it's for these reasons I've already stated already, and many others that I'm sure will be highlighted by the applicant as to why there have been no objections to this application. And yes, this development of a house is within 3% of the green belt, but we as ward councillors believe the significant community benefits for our local children and schools for generations to come, the additional ecological and environmental benefits, the uniqueness of the application in design being backed by one of the most respected institutions in the country, as well as Places Matter, and the carbon neutral footprint and energy saving initiatives incorporated within the build, and the fact that this is a very high profile application has received no objections locally from an area that certainly knows how to object. My ward colleagues and I are happy for this application to be approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Muslim. We have a supporter, David Norris. Come forward, please, Mr. Norris. As you've witnessed, you will have 3 minutes to address the meeting and then take any questions. Please, thank you.
Good afternoon, members. We recognise the application before you is on Greenbelt land, and only in very special circumstances will development be allowed. We believe this is no exception in a number of ways. 97% remains Greenbelt with enhanced ecological value. Forest School outdoor learning area, wildflower meadow and wildlife conservation area, all supported by the Wildlife Trust and the UCL Institute of Education's leading Professor Michael Rees. Only 3% is for our family home. Following the recent moorland fires, there's a 3.5-acre Wildlife Trust conservation area will provide lapwings a safe environment and opportunity to thrive. Management of the area has been agreed with the Wildlife Trust with controlled supervised access for the Forest School members. 53% of the site is for the outdoor learning area, supported by 4 of the nearest schools from a variety of wards, together with schools out organisations. A significant wider community benefit for thousands of children over 99 years, teaching them about nature and conservation. The government initiative on climate change is to educate children about nature, and they've put funding in place for schools to teach our children. The facilities that I am providing can deliver this message. The master plan has been developed over a long period of time, working with a variety of officers and vetted by 4 independent design reviews. Places Matter concluded it intelligent, considered and forward-thinking, and referenced it unique. They looked at the master plan, not just the house design, and stated it was unique and that the Forest School provision was very generous. Of the 5 previous approvals by members for houses in the Green Belt, all had objections and only 1 was considered by independent design review, and none included any community benefit. The first reason that my application is unique is that there is no objections from consultees, residents, neighbours or the public. The second reason my application is unique is that support from all the consultees, ecologists, Wildlife Trust, the public, direct neighbours and even ward councillors. The third reason my application is unique is because Places Matter say it is unique, and they are the independent design review panel in the North West and have never assessed such a scheme. This evidence has been provided to officers. The openness of the Greenbelt is not affected as the house is hidden from view from Longworth Road. It is within the village boundary and infilled between other properties. I have provided the council with a specialist legal unilateral undertaking for the outdoor learning area and wildlife areas for a period of 99 years, benefiting a variety of schools and wards within the borough. It is a lifetime home for our family, and we were proud to live adjacent to the Wildlife Trust areas and give something back to the community I have been a part of for 25 years. Middle Critchley Farm is vibrant, exciting and raises design standards in the borough and not in any way undermines the council's policy on safeguarding Greenbelt. It raises the bar, making it very difficult for future applications coming before members. Our children are the future of our planet, and with the facility I'm providing, members have the opportunity to deliver the government initiative to educate children about nature on behalf of the schools within this borough for the next 100 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Morris. Any questions? Councillor Hornby.
Thank you, Chair. Can you just expand a little bit more on the school aspect of it and what they intend to gain from that?
It was offered originally to one local school, which my children went to, and then it seemed sort of selfish just precluding the other schools in the village, so it was expanded to the 4 local schools geographically. And then on top of that, we have expressed by email to 27 other schools, some of which have a forest school facility and some of which don't, in the underprivileged areas. Devonshire Road is one of them, Smithills, Tongan, Hoff, Crompton Ward. So other wards can use the facility on a managed basis. It has provision for 2 minibuses per visit, so one would park in lay-by on site, and the site is designed to accept another minibus, so we were thinking 2 16-seater minibuses. The Professor Michael Rees said that a class visit of 27 pupils with a teacher and teacher assistant and the minibus drivers would be provision.
Further questions? Councillor Sherrington.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered, it is called the Lapwing, you call it the Lapwing Centre. I was just wondering, what actually is it that you're going to do with Lapwing? Thank you.
So over the last sort of number of years, we have had meetings, several meetings with the Wildlife Trust, and with the recent moorland fires, it has caused devastation to the wildlife and the habitats. So the Wildlife Trust own the Longworth Clough SSSI Nature Reserve, which is a number of acres going up, which abuts the site. So they would feather their existing Longworth Clough area onto the site, which has got a number of species like lapwings, and we would agree with them. So we create a ha-ha, which is an underground sort of trench. There's nothing above ground, that keeps the lapwings safe and on sort of the 3.5 acre area that has been earmarked for the Wildlife Trust.
Thank you. Councillor Ratcliffe.
Who will control how many schools attend the place at once to stop congestion?
We would work with the schools and with the planning officers. Walmsley School at the nearest school have shown more support and most interest in using the facility. So it could be conditioned that there would be no more than one visit at a time, so there's no traffic congestion, and each visit would have a number of possibly 27 pupils with a teacher and an assistant. And then we could have 3 visits per day, either 5 days a week, which is 15 visits a week, for the 27 pupils, and we thought over a 30-week period they could use it within the school holidays. There is a schools out facility, so things like the grow beds that need maintenance during the school holidays would be continuous, and things wouldn't go to ruin. So that would be worked as a condition with the council officers and the schools on a method statement. With the schools. So we could say have a master school if it was Walmsley School, and the other schools network with them on the use of who's using it on what calendar days.
Thank you. No further questions? Right, thank you, Mr Norris. You can resume your seat. Can I apologise? The children outside the pantomime, not to the outdoor school, but matters now open for debate. Councillor Hornby.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't see anything wrong with this application. I understand why officers have recommended refusal on this application because of the nature of the application. But we as a committee have the right to look at that application and determine whether or not there are circumstances in which this can be approved. There's only 3% of this application which will be affected with a house part of it, but the rest of it is a massive benefit to the local community. As it's already been said, the design is unique. It's carbon neutral. The silver thermal panels that it has, the rainwater collection, etc., etc. The list goes on. You know, things that this is a building and a development into the future. And but for me, the thing that sold it more than anything is the learning area for the schools. And I think that, you know, I don't think we do enough for our youngsters in order to learn about nature and the environment and all the rest of it. And this, for me, ticks all the boxes that there are needed to be ticked. And the applicant needs to be applauded for this application. I think it's absolutely wonderful. So I'm more than happy to move approval on this application.
Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. I was at the last time I was on the committee last time we heard this as well, and I will stand by what I said at the last committee, is that I do think this application is outstanding, and I do think it meets the criteria and level for us to consider it within the Greenbelt. And the fact that 97% of the site will remain in Greenbelt and will be enhanced because of the 3% being given over to the building, I think actually tips me absolutely to support this application again. Like Councillor Hornby said, the real uniqueness about it, additional uniqueness apart from the architecture of the building, which I think is unique, and like he says is carbon neutral, etc., is the forest school and the ability of local schools in the area to use it. And it's a facility we just don't have in that area in Bolton at the moment. So I think we really should look at this again with a view of supporting it, because I completely agree with members, and we should be protecting our green belt. But the fact that the 97% of the site will remain in green belt and will be enhanced and improved and better quality green belt leads me to believe that we can support it. The architecture is my sort of architecture anyway. It's modern, it's clean, it's nice. I like that. That's subjective to each individual. But I'm more than happy to second approval of the application.
Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, Chair. There's a lot of good things about this application, no doubt. It's hitting a lot of the right buttons, and it's also quite telling that the 3 ward councillors all support it. Normally, I would go along with the ward council on this. However, I think it's more important than ever that we protect our green belt, and we're very, very stringent about how we look at things which are exceptions. And I take note of the recommendations of the officers. This committee has a right to overturn the officers' recommendations, and it does occasionally, and I think it's a good thing that it does. But on this occasion, I happen to agree with the officers. I don't think this is quite exceptional enough for me to support it, so I'll be voting against.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. I fully understand the ward councillors' motivation for wanting to support this application, because it does provide facilities for local schools in their ward. However, I'm not sure that that in itself is or constitutes the very special circumstances required for us to approve this application. We have refused this before, of course, and according to the report, it hasn't substantially changed since then. What's changed is that there are now some more letters of support or letters of opinion supposedly supporting the application. But in essence, in planning terms, not a lot has changed. And therefore, for the sake of consistency, and I agree with Councillor Hayes, now is the time to be seen to be supporting our green belt. But with all that in mind, I really don't see how we can approve this. I think we should wait. There is an outstanding appeal, of course, against our original refusal. That must be due fairly soon, I assume. I think we should just wait for the outcome of that appeal, and if planning inspectors are prepared to approve it, then that's fine. But I think for the sake of consistency and for the protection of the green belt, this still does not meet the very special circumstances, and therefore I will, if Councillor Hayes proposed refusal, I'm happy to second it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I would like to disagree with those sentiments because I'm always very proud of the way this committee and our officers do protect the green belt, and that the requirements are very stringent. But I do think on this occasion that the benefits do outweigh any negative impact. We do build on the green belt occasionally, and there are very, obviously very strict criteria for the kind of buildings that can go up on the green belt. And quite often, I have found that some of those buildings, because they're agricultural, they're allowed, but they're ugly buildings, but they're allowed because they fall within what is permissible. This is a beautiful concept, and it gives so much back. And I think I can understand, I totally understand the purist point of view on this, that, that we shouldn't accept it. But I'm with Councillor Morgan on this. I think we should embrace this kind of initiative. It's giving an awful lot back to the community, and also it's something, as Councillor Hayes mentioned, it's something that the 3 ward councillors are supporting, and you've got to think with that comes a lot of support from the residents in the ward. So I would like to see this application approved.
Thanks, Chair. I will manfully try to make a contribution here. Absolutely, I'll try not to repeat what Councillor Allen and Councillor Hayes said, but I do want to support what they said. Nobody would argue for 1 minute about the concepts of what's trying to be achieved here. The point is it's in the wrong place. It's not even on the footprint of existing farm buildings, which, might make something more acceptable. A new build is permitted within the green belt if it is of really exceptional and innovative quality and design. And although this building is quite attractive, it does not fit in to that category. And I think Councillor Allen summed it up really when he said there is an outstanding appeal on an almost identical application. If we're interpreting national and local planning policy incorrectly, then the inspector will tell us that. So I think we should refuse the application because nothing's changed since the last time. Although I think, unless I'm wrong, in March 1919, the Bromley Cross councillors were different. So I think there was definitely a councillor who was against it from Bromley Cross in March.
Thank you, Chair. I think we, as a committee, have a very strong record on protecting the green belt. Something that I'm really proud of, being part of this committee that protects our green belt. But I do believe that under the circumstances with this application, there are special circumstances, and there are circumstances that come with opportunities. Opportunities for further generations, not only for children that are at school at the moment, but there's talk of a 99-year lease in supporting that. So I'm not going to sort of hold this application back. I think we do need to make a decision. I think we can't rely on the pending sort of decision that's going to be made nationally. It's in front of us today. I think we need to make a decision. It is a tough decision. We are losing 3% of the green belt, but thankfully we're preserving 97% of it, with the opportunity of young people to learn about the environment, to learn about nature, to learn about conservation in the future. And I think that's something that's really important, and that's something that ideally needs to be done in that sort of an area. So I have no hesitation in supporting the application.
Councillor Darvish.
Thank you, Chair. 3 reasons really why I don't think it's ticks the special circumstances box. One is the fact that it's mentioned in the report, permitted development rights allow for the forestation of land. So you can have that anyway. The other thing is outdoor learning. I totally understand it's key to a child's personal development, but schools are actually already doing it. It is part of their curriculum. And the most important one is the technologies actually are tried and tested and actually available readily in retail shops. So I don't believe it ticks the special circumstances, and that's why I'll support the refusal.
Thank you. Given that it's been proposed approval, and therefore I suspect, well, it will be a split vote clearly, can I suggest that if it is to be approved, the only way we can take it forward would be to approve it in principle, subject to conditions being agreed by officers in consultation with chairman, vice chairman and ward councillors. So that is if members are minded to carry a proposal that it be approved. We did have a counter proposal and amendment that it be refused, but on this straightforward and against, we will vote for the application, for approval, or against. Okay, let's be clear. I'll be voting against.
Councillor Abdullah. Against. Councillor Allen.
Against.
Councillor Ayub.
Against.
Councillor Bullock.
For.
Councillor Darvish.
Yes.
Councillor Dean.
For.
Councillor Hayes.
Against.
Councillor Hornby.
For.
Councillor Morgan.
For.
Councillor Newell.
For.
Councillor Peel.
Yes.
Councillor Radcliffe. Councillor Sanders.
For.
Councillor Sherrington.
Against.
Councillor Walsh.
Against.
Councillor Wright.
That application is refused. Thank you. We come now to application 6551 on page 83 for property at 523-525 Plodder Lane.
Thank you, Chair. The applicant has submitted a retrospective application for demolition of number 523 Plodder Lane and the almost entire demolition of 525 Plodder Lane and the erection of a detached 2-storey dwelling. As members can visualise on site this morning, the site is well underway, well under construction, and came to light earlier in the year as a result of an enforcer complaint that the proposal was being built not in accordance with the approved plan, i.e. bigger. In terms of the earlier proposal, the rear and side extensions have been removed. I draw members' attention to pages 98 to 101 on the officer's report, which clearly shows how the proposed 2 houses, whilst has permission to be converted into 1 with extensions, over two approvals, and then obviously the current proposal being at the bottom. And the lines demonstrate how the proposal has changed in terms of the various dimensions, height and width. The current proposal is 62 centimetres wider, 53 centimetres deeper and 50 centimetres higher than the previously approved scheme. There are also changes to the dimension of the bays, central gable feature, and also changes to the position, size and number of windows. Further details provided at paragraph 2 of the officer's report. The drawings provided on pages 98 to 99 show how the dwelling has evolved from the original two dwellings, going through the various 2 approvals. Drawings on page 101 clearly show the differences in height in the changes that have been made. What the drawings perhaps do not show is how the current dwelling as currently built fits in with both the character of the area, street scene, and also how the proposal impacts on the living conditions of adjoining residents. The overall property is 1/3 wider than the original dwelling, whilst the proposed rear elevation extends approximately 3.5 metres to the rear when compared with the original rear elevation. In terms of the design and the character of the house, officers consider that the 60 centimetre increase in depth is marginal and that there are other dwellings which have had a large side extensions in the local area. The overall design of the proposed front elevation is considered to be more balanced with more vertical emphasis than the previous approval, which officers considered the current proposal to be design improvement which mimics the 1930s, 40s architecture of the street. In terms of the width of the houses, as this is at 1/3 wider than the cumulative width of the original pair of houses, this is markedly different than the character and appearance of other houses along Plodder Lane. However, the council has granted permission for side extensions on existing semi-detached houses of a comparable width to the proposed new house. Turning to the impact on residential amenity, residents on Tigfold Road to the rear have expressed concerns in relation to the loss of privacy and overlooking into bedrooms and bathrooms. Previous approvals on the site have accepted that the previous 2-storey rear extensions to the property resulted in a reduction in interface standards door distances to somewhere between 19.8 and 18.75 metres. The reason for this was the newly created first floor rear bedrooms were not classified as main room windows as they were not the 2 largest bedrooms in the dwelling. The current proposal falls short by a further 53 centimetres from the original proposal, moving back 53 centimetres. Based on the rear windows still not being main room windows, it's not considered that this reduction in level would justify refusal. In order to mitigate this reduction, the applicant is willing to supplant the existing evergreen shrubs along the boundary with further trees to increase the level of screening. Also, the Juliet balcony, as members will have witnessed or been partially constructed, would revert back to windows that have been granted before, the size and the location. Therefore, on balance, members are recommended to approve the permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Allen. We have a ward councillor to speak on the matter, Councillor Haworth. Councillor Haworth, you have 5 minutes to speak on this matter.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I wish to raise some points of consideration only today. Residents still have matters that they are raising since the 2 previous consents on this application that they gave views to when there was a consultation. When there was a build there that seemed to be different to the consents given that those living in the area noticed, residents raised these matters and this was progressed as a planning enforcement case. The applicant and officers have worked on many matters resulting in today's application for the plot. Now, there is no doubt that it is positive to develop 2 houses into 1 modern family home. And also on this part of Plodder Lane, where we have detached and semi-detached dwellings, there are a couple of wide, large dwellings. One certainly at ground floor level towards Redgate Way, and one further up Plodder Lane towards Smethurst Lane. Residents asked if planning councillors would look at the planning issues that some of them are still feeling they cannot get assurance fully enough on. Matters, for example, of in regard to the interface distances, they want it to be right in terms of window, height of 523 and 525 being considered adequately in the measurements. They want also it to be right in terms of what are decided within policy to be principal rooms of the properties at the back of 523 and 525 in terms of the interface distances. And I do recognise that a lot of work has already been put into the matters that have been raised by residents and this application, therefore, that comes here today. The applicant has made a number of effective and positive alterations to design and build in this application since the 2 previous consents. The details of matters that were objected against are set out quite clearly in this report by the officers for planning members today. There is obviously real importance to the evergreen conifers and the fir trees at the location. Thank you for making the visit today and having a look at the property that is the application and the properties close to it. The agreement to plant additional trees needs to satisfy all the matters regarding height and overlook and privacy to the properties adjacent and behind 523525. This is at condition 2. The trees provide very welcome screening and have featured as material matters also in the previous consents. So thank you very much for letting me just be clear on the matters residents have been asking for support on. Thanks very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Haworth. We now have an objector, Gary Bryan. Would you like to come forward, please? Thank you. You've got 3 minutes to address the committee and then take any questions.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm one of a large number of objectors to this application, and I've been asked to speak not on my behalf but of those other objectors as well. Our main objections to this application are the building as it currently stands is too close to the rear of the houses on Tigfold Road, particularly number 28. The distance between the new build and number 28 as measured by the occupant of number 28 is 18.5 metres. It is quoted in the regulations that interface distances between properties should be no less than 21, and this distance should be considered to increase relative to the height of the new build. The new build in this application is higher than initially planned, and therefore we would suggest that the interface distance should really be greater. The elevated position of this new build, in particular the dormer, which due to its size is really a 3rd floor, together with the close proximity to the rear of the houses on Tigfold Road, gives a view from the upper floors of the new build into the rear bedroom of number 28, which by definition is a principal room, as it is one of the 2 largest bedrooms in that property. The recommendation made by the planning officer, Mr. Ganley, in his report, that the dormer be fitted with centre pivot windows, we feel will not prevent the available view, owing to the height of that dormer. The bay windows with brick pillars or mullions and the stone coin features are not, we believe, in the stylistic keeping of the surrounding houses in the immediate vicinity. It is known by the neighbouring residents that this opinion is shared by a large number of passers-by, with whom the residents have spoken to on more than one occasion. In fact, had this build been built to the original plan submitted at the beginning of 2018, which had received planning permission, then the similar style bay windows to neighbouring properties and the cement rendered upper front, as shown on those plans, the house would more closely match those surrounding it and would fit in more readily. The building is now much taller than originally planned, and the size of the dormer has also been increased. The building also has a greater footprint, increasing the overbearing and dominant effect on the neighbouring properties. Owing to the previous behaviour of the applicant, in their complete disregard for permissions granted and conditions levied, and simply appearing to build just what they want, we have no trust in them that they will adhere to any permissions granted or conditions applied by this committee. With the risk that if permission is granted, they will continue as before and build just what they want unless closely monitored by the local authority, which I suspect is not possible. In conclusion, we respectfully request that you consider refusal of this application on the grounds that there are too many separate issues within this application for it to be easily rectified by any other means. The fact that the building does not comply with the interface distance regulations with houses on Tigfold Road and is not in the scale or stylistic keeping of the surrounding houses in the immediate vicinity. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Hornby.
Yeah, just one question. It's in relation to at what point was the alarm bells raised with the authority that this was not being built to what was agreed.
I am aware that a number of the neighbouring residents, the initial planning application was for the conversion of 2 semi-detached dwellings into one. It became apparently clear once building work had started that this was actually a demolition of the 2 original properties. And it's my understanding that some of the neighbouring residents contacted the local authority on that occasion to say they're not adhering to what they've got permission for.
Any further questions? Thank you very much. You may resume your seat. We now have a supporter for the application, Mr. Ali. Come forward, please. You have 3 minutes and then subject to any questions.
Mr. Chairman, I do have some annexes, if you would accept them. There are pictures of the old walls. Yeah. I did speak to Susan beforehand and she did say bring them along just in case they do accept them. Cool, no problem. Thank you. Respected members, good afternoon. Allow me to introduce ourselves. We have a family of 5 parents and 3 mature sons. We have been residing at the address since 2008. We have been members of the farm community for over 40 years. A plan was put together for the foreseeable future of our family, most importantly our parents, when we decided it was best to get our parents to settle down right before their age gets the best of them, in a place they deserve. Having worked so hard throughout the years, it was decided that it would be in the community we have never left, for their comfort. Most importantly, having made good relationships with a number of neighbours at the time, and having facilities within a mile of us, it felt to be the right place. It's saddening to be in this position, which feels like a time loop. From the day we began the process, it's been a difficult 23 months. I hold understanding not every personality agrees to another's vision or plan. Our first ever application was submitted on Monday the 8th of January 2018. From the start, it was made clear in plain text what our intentions are and what we wish to build in scale. The members, whether you agree or not, some bills do and do not have a positive and a negative in scale. Regardless, Bolton Council worked very hard for us and delivered a verdict of approval on 2nd of March 2018. For the members, I'd like to add, from our experience, when you begin such a task, you will most definitely come across some issues, be it with the current building or area regulations, also things you want to alter for the reason to keep up with time or even change in preference. Our second application was put in on Wednesday the 9th of May 2018. The application is a resubmission of application reference 0262818, which is an extension to the building and the dormer, which was approved on Tuesday the 10th of July 2018. Over time, we've had numerous issues with our contractor who took it amongst himself at the start to have himself and his builders take on the build. Up till March 2019, he was in charge of the architectural work and the actual build itself. So as a customer, we weren't involved. Whatever we were asked for as in payment-wise, we were just passing forward onto him. Yeah, thank you. After March 2019, I took it amongst myself to take on the task to finish off what we have already on site. It come to the light after a member of Bolton Council come onto site after certain amendments that we had processed through our agent hadn't been put forward or weren't very clear and couldn't be envisioned by the neighbours. And we are here today trying to seek approval. I willingly myself hold to work immediately after the visit from Bolton Council themselves. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Ali. I just want to ask you, did you have a building inspector on your foundations?
Sorry, yes we did.
Did you get your building inspector's report afterwards?
We were just told that it's been approved and to go ahead by the architect.
The question, Councillor Hornby.
Yeah, I'm just curious more than anything. I mean, this has been a bit of an eyesore for quite some time. If approval is given today, what's the timescale involved in order to get this mess sorted out and get it finished and bring to an end of misery to local residents?
Well, we should have been done last Christmas. We want to move in as quick as we can as well, and we want to take away the upset that the residents have as well. It's been a building site for 23 months now, and we do wish to complete, hopefully before Easter, if approval is given.
Secondary question. The objector raised concerns about the distance between principal windows overlooking Tigfold Road. Can I just ask, what are the windows on your side that overlook Tigfold Road?
I'll start with your question. Our property never sat flush straight. It was always sat at an angle. And when we started the build, we started using the foundations on the 525 side and the front wall. Now, to follow the foundation for the front and 525 side, it would mean the building would sit at an angle like before. And when extended from 523 side, it would sit further back than 525 side to keep it in proportion. Where it is for the windows, originally we did have just one window in the bedroom, which we've changed to having 2 single windows, which are a smaller size. What we've opted for is not just for ourselves, but for the neighbours. We've chosen to have integrated blinds inserted in the windows, not just for the privacy of the residents, but for ourselves as well. We do have to consider ourselves as well. We are obviously going to move in there at some point, and we would like some privacy as much as our neighbours. I hope that answers your question.
Councillor Ayub.
You know, you are slightly over in measurement. Did you achieve anything, or is it just an error?
Like I did mention, we did have a contractor at the start. He took it amongst himself and his workers to start the build. As a customer, you just leave it in the hands of someone who's a professional, expecting them to do the best job possible. We never pulled out a ruler, we never pulled out a tape measure to make sure he's doing the right job, because we trusted him. He was a family friend at the time. But with the scale of the property, it only come to light when Bolton Council had turned up with an enforcement to let us know that, okay, certain things haven't been made clear in the application, and it's best if you stop work, which we did.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if you can just confirm that part of your latest proposals is to reduce the size of the windows that we saw this morning in the rear dormer. The windows we saw, the openings rather, were quite big. Can you confirm that your intention is to reduce the size of those?
Yeah, most definitely. Our intentions are to reduce the size. At the time when enforcement came, well, a member of Bolton Council turned up, work was going on, and they were halfway through completing the roof work, including the dormer. But I took it amongst myself to make life easy for ourselves and the council, to save the aggro, to halt work. But yes, the answer to your question is yeah, the size will be reduced, definitely.
Councillor Sherrington.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Allen. Would you like to tell me or explain to me whose idea it was, whether it was yours or the architect, on putting the Juliet balconies in?
Well, at the start, it was our idea. The reason we chose to have a Juliet door was because of the height of the house. You could see over the houses and you could have a nice view. But when concerns were brought forward, we said straight away, okay, if that's the concern, we'll take it out.
Could I just remind you that you didn't have planning permission for that, you know?
Yeah, totally agree. We haven't put in any Jubilee doors, as in the frame-wise. Like I said to the other member as well, work was in progress, and when a member of the council turned up, we halted work then and then. That's why, from what you can see It may seem like it's a Juliet door, it might seem like it's a large window, but work was not completed at the time.
Please. For the benefit of members who weren't on site this morning, Mr. Allen, can we just look at page 102 in the papers? I think there are a number of material issues there that we ought to address, and that should be read in conjunction with page 98. Can you confirm, Mr. Allen, that on the first approval, and indeed on the amended second approval, the rear extension as built was approved?
Can you just repeat the question, sorry?
Can you confirm on page 102, you show the original pair of houses, the first approval with a rear extension, and then below it, the second approval with that same rear extension, and now the current proposal with that same rear extension. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's great, yeah.
So the rear extension is therefore already approved?
I think it does come out slightly further. It does come out, I think it's about 50 centimetres further.
So it's marginally wider, thank you. And the front side extension, as shown on page 98, is that marginal increase between the second approval and the bottom drawing, which is the current.
That's correct, yeah.
Right. So the third issue then, which isn't showing drawings particularly clearly, would be on page, can't see it now, the page that shows the, page 99, that shows at the bottom drawing the now proposed obscure glazed dormers.
That's correct, yeah.
Those are the issues we are discussing this afternoon. Councillor Sherrington.
Thank you, Chair. All it is that it's to do with the building inspector. Right, if the building inspector had inspected the foundations, which they're supposed to do, I was just wondering, does that report come to the planning officers when it's done? Right, well, how...
Thank you, Chair. I mean, the difficulty sometimes is that private building inspectors inspect some properties, and then our own local authority building inspector inspects other properties. And if our own building inspector inspects properties, then these things can be flagged up earlier than would normally be the case. There are a lot of properties that are inspected by private inspectors. So, you know, we have flagged this up in the past within the public, and appreciate the press is here. So, you know, it's getting that message out there that you know, if people don't stick to the plans, then at some point, either during the build or even after they've finished it, they will be it will be checked. We have a monitoring officer now to go out and do checks on properties. We won't catch them all, but you know, we will be seeking to ensure that choices after people have got approval can't just be implemented without there being proper consents in place.
So therefore, if somebody's buying a house off somebody and it's only had a private inspector that's had a look at the property while it's being built, they've got the risk there. The risk is being passed on to somebody else.
Mr. Sherrington, I understand the point you're making, and it is tangential to this application, but it is a wider issue. Can I ask that you raise it in another forum? Your point is made, but caveat emptor exists. The application now before us. Councillor Hornby, you have a question to officers. Thank you.
I do, thank you, Chairman. It's just in relation to what I've already spoken about 2 or 3 times before, and it's with regard to this distance between principal windows to Tickfold. Can you confirm the distance and whether it meets the distance?
I mean, as explained, the distance of 21 metres from a two-storey main room window to main room window is 21 metres. That is the interface distance. But because if you look at page 102, so not 102, page 104, if you look at the proposed first floor, that's the current proposal on page 104. So if you look at the rear elevation, those two bedrooms at first floor are not the biggest bedrooms. So for main room window, it has to be the 2 largest bedrooms in a house, and they are similar, but the bedrooms at the front have got bays, so they by definition are larger. It's not an ideal situation because obviously they still are being used as bedrooms and they are less than 21 metres away. I suppose the same goes for the bedroom in the second floor because that's an extra storey, so that would potentially, if the windows were obscured, that would need a further 3 metres. But I mean, that's why it doesn't necessarily sit comfortably, but it complies with policy, so that's why officers aren't recommending refusal.
Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. Page 99, is it suggesting that all the rear elevation windows are obscured? No. So why have they all been shaded like they are? Because the above application, they're not shaded.
I think that's just the way officers try to look at pace.
So the only obscured then, just confirm, are the dormers. Thank you.
The application is now open for debate.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start the ball rolling if everyone wants to chip in afterwards. I just think this is an absolute perfect example of planning creep, if you ask my opinion. You know, we've gone from the original approval to convert 2 houses into 1, and then we've got the second, the third, and now we're looking at this this final application. I think, as Councillor Hornby touched on, I don't know whether he's going to come in. For me, it comes down to the interface distances. If we either got our 21 metre guidance between primary windows or not, and that's been breached. There is a complete lack of privacy for the surrounding properties that have to put to this application site. It's absolutely a huge property, completely dominant on the street scene, and it's completely out of character with the surrounding properties, which a majority are semi-detached properties around it. So I think it's absolutely completely inappropriate, and I'm going to move refusal. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. It's a difficult one, a very, very difficult application to look at. But I'm going to go on the side of the local residents on this one, I think. It is an application where it has been milked beyond cause, and for the same reasons that Councillor Morgan talked about refusal, I think those are reasonable grounds for refusal, and I think we should try this one with let the planning inspectorate make the decision if we have to. But I would quite happily second refusal on this application.
Councillor Peel and then Councillor Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try to be brief. It's not planning creep. There are 2 existing applications, both of which were given permission. So that's not planning creep. That's this committee coming to a considered decision. And it's certainly not been milked beyond cause, whatever that expression Means from Councillor Hornby. The problem is with the retrospective application like this is it's quite tempting for us to question the applicant, listen to what he's saying and think, no, sorry, it's a fur cop. You've done something you shouldn't have done and you've been caught and now you're going to face the consequences. It's very tempting to do that and I understand that. If this is refused, the applicant surely has legal recompense to the project overseer who was running this for him. Certainly can sue him if what the applicant's telling us is true. However, you've got to put that to one side. Whether you think an applicant's been naughty or not, or whether you believe their story or not, you have to put it to one side and look at the officer recommendation, because the officer recommendation is to look at this as a brand new application. And their analysis is it fits in better in the street scene. It's more compatible to the area and there's no policy reasons to refuse it. And that, unfortunately, is how we must focus our attention. We're not here as a court to dish out punishments, etc. We're just here to deal with the application. And it is very balanced. I'll agree with Councillor Hornby on that. It is very balanced. But on balanced applications, I think you've got to go with the officer recommendation, which is what I'll be doing.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. I'm normally the first to jump up and demand that buildings like this are pulled down tomorrow because it's built bigger than was approved. But we do have to consider all the differences. It isn't just the scale and the massing, but the size is bigger, there's no doubt about that. It's half a metre deeper, half a metre taller, and I think 0.6 wider, something like that. But it's about half a metre bigger in all dimensions. Importantly, the half metre on the depth is at the rear, so that does move the rear wall half a metre closer to the houses on Tigfall Road. The dormer is important because the dormer is larger than was last approved, and I'll come back to that in a moment. The porch on the front is different from what was approved. Some dimensions are slightly bigger, some dimensions are slightly smaller. All in all, it's slightly smaller than was approved. The bay windows in the front are smaller than was approved. The windows overall, certainly on the rear elevation, are smaller than was approved. And the Juliet balconies have been removed, of course, from the upper floor. So, for me, on balance, this property is really not a lot bigger than was approved because some bits are smaller, some are larger. That's not the bit that concerns me. The only bit that concerns me is the dormer, really. But the dormer is bigger, and it's bigger because the rear face of the dormer is 0.4 metres further away from the ridge, 0.4 metres closer to the back of the house, 0.4 metres closer to the houses on Tigfall Road. So I think there's a compromise to be had here. Not sure how I'm going to express this as a motion, but I think there's a compromise to be had. Given that the rear face of the rear dormer is going to be modified anyway to reduce the size of the windows, my suggestion would be to pull the rear face of that dormer back by 0.4 metres to what was approved previously. Because that's what we've approved previously. It is important to remember that this house does have approval for almost what's there now. You know, we're not comparing the original pair of semis with what's there now, it's the previous approval. So my suggestion might be, if that rear dormer can be modified back to what was approved, then I'm quite happy to support this application. I'll be interested in officers' comments. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Ayub.
Thank you. So are you deferring it? Are you proposing to defer it or?
I'm moving approval.
All right, good.
But subject
Okay.
to an alteration in the rear facing the door.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. The current proposal seeks to secure the retrospective permission. It's nearly half a metre over in height, depth and width. In officer's report, it states that difference in approved and current proposal is very marginal. The applicant has cooperated with the officers to delete some proposals to be acceptable, and I would be supporting the approval as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was waiting for Nick to do his spiel on retrospective planning applications, so I'm glad Nick contributed there. So one way of looking at this application is for the officers to consider the application as it's come right now and have a look at it and determine the application like that. But as planning committee members, you can't help thinking the previous application, the increase in size, and what kind of an impact the increase in size and volume has had on the neighbours. So if you think the impact on this additional size of the property has such a great impact on the neighbours, then, you know, it warrants refusal. So that's the way I sometimes have a look at these type of applications, another way of looking at them. And for me, Councillor Allen is right, it is substantially, it is more or less the same, just marginally increased. The impact would be not that great to warrant a refusal on this application. And I'm supportive of the reconstruction of the dormers to help in terms of the massing of the building. So I'm happy to support the application with the dormer amendments.
Thank you. Any further speakers? We have a proposal to refuse, an amendment to approve, and a half amendment to approve subject to dormers.
It's not an amendment to approve, it's fine.
Thank you, Chair. It's an interesting conundrum. I mean, in terms of openness and transparency, then the way I would take that motion would be that it would be a motion to secure that amendment, but that we would bring the application back so that committee and members of the public and the objector and ward member have the opportunity to make comments on that amendment, rather than the amendment be done in effect behind closed doors and approved behind closed doors with agreement through the chair and vice chair. So I would take that as an instruction to the applicant to amend the scheme and to bring it back, and on that basis it might be supported at least by some members.
As I have it, we have a proposal to refuse the application, which was moved and seconded. We have a proposal to approve, which was moved and seconded, and then there's a proposal from Councillor Allen, seconded by Councillor Darvesh, that the matter should be approved subject to, which is in effect a deferral, because we can't do that through a committee.
I'll withdraw my motion to approve and support what Councillor Allen said.
So we're therefore faced with a straight deferment or a refusal.
I think we vote on deferment.
So we vote on deferment first. Okay, so we now have a simple motion that the matter stands deferred so that officers can negotiate with the applicant the issue of the dormers. Members clear about that matter? Okay, thank you.
Councillor Abdullah, Councillor Allen, Councillor Ayub, Councillor Bullock, Councillor Darvesh, Councillor Dean, Councillor Hayes, Councillor Hornby,
Councillor Morgan, Councillor Newell, Councillor Peel, Councillor Radcliffe, Councillor Sherrington, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Wright.
The matter stands deferred for officers to negotiate with the applicant. Thank you. We turn back then to the agenda at page 35, 1 to 11 Bark Street East.
Thank you, Chair. Members will recall that we presented this case to you back in September. We're pleased to be able to inform members that the applicant has done literally everything that we've asked them to do in order to improve the proposal, and therefore the recommendation is now one of approval. You probably recall that our previous concerns were the limited size of the 12 units. It was the bare minimum of the national space standards, coupled with the limited external space. Also that the design simply wasn't good enough for a Georgian conservation area in Bolton Town Centre. Okay. And that the internal layout had main room windows very close to and directly overlooking land that isn't in the applicant's ownership. The improvements we've now secured to the scheme include the number of units has been reduced from 12 to 9. This allows the unit size to increase modestly, but from 39 square metres to 46 square metres. That will make a difference to the quality of the development and to the living conditions of its occupants. There's now no principal windows on the rear elevation. The rear windows are all bathrooms and kitchens, living area and bedrooms on the front. Inappropriately suburban features such as the stone quoins and timber fence have been removed from the scheme, replaced with a brick wall. The frontage now boasts railings set on stone plinths, all to match the Georgian properties opposite. Timber frame sliding sash windows, other minor but important details such as getting the proportions right, and also adequate bin storage at the rear, as agreed with colleagues in waste and recycling. Despite these improvements, it's still imperfect. The external space is still highly constrained, but we think that's acceptable in a town centre context and balanced out by the increase in unit sizes. We've also compromised on allowing mock sliding sash windows on the rear, still in hardwood but not genuine sliding sash. As you know, members, your officers are all about compromise and facilitating high quality development where we can. So we now recommend that members approve the development. It would be extraordinarily helpful to me if members could express a desire to see that the quality of this scheme is not reduced by value engineering or the discharge of conditions as work progresses on its construction. We want to see this development implemented as approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The application before us, officers worked hard on this one to achieve members' views at the last meeting. Councillor Hornby. Sorry, I lost track of the ward boundary there, yes. Your ward comes further south than I'd anticipated, Councillor Darvish, apology.
Chair, we were right to defer this application last time, so the number of apartments has actually been reduced from 12 to 9. The external's actually been improved, so it's much more in keeping with the conservation area. So I'm happy to move approval.
Councillor Hornby.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to second approval on this. It was, as Councillor Darvish said, right to defer this application, but I'd just like to add the comments that our planning officer said to ensure that the high quality is maintained and that there's no alterations done to it to make it not look as good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sherrington.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank the applicant for actually taking notice of this committee when we were actually giving them good advice, because I do think that this particular scheme now has got a better chance of actually having tenants or selling them or whatever he's going to do with them. He's got a better chance of actually getting some recovery on this now. So yes, I welcome this and I think it'll look brilliant. Thank you.
Been proposed and seconded. We'll take the vote. This is for or against?
Councillor Allen. Councillor Ayub. Councillor Bullock. Councillor Darvish. Councillor Dean. Councillor Hayes. Councillor Hornby. Councillor Morgan. Councillor Peel. Councillor Radcliffe, Councillor Sanders, Councillor Sherrington, Councillor Walsh.
For.
I think that's everyone.
That is approved. We now come to 2 school applications for which Helen Williams has sat all afternoon for 3 hours, so she can then present. So the first one is for Sharples Primary School, Hugh Lucas Street.
Permission is sought for the erection of a new green powder-coated 2.4 metre perimeter fencing around the school playing fields. The existing fence between the school building and the playing fields is to be retained. The school have stated that they require the new fencing for security reasons, as there is currently a lack of control as to who can access the playing fields. 6 objections have been received from the residents of Langham Close, whose garden is back onto the school. 2 comments have also been received from local residents. Concerns raised that material planning considerations include the height of the fencing and the impact on the amenity of the neighbouring residents. The height of 2.4 metres is the minimum height for school fencing recommended by the Department of Education in the interest of security. The well-meshed design of the fencing allows for a clear visibility through the fence, and it is not considered to be unduly harmful to the amenity of the neighbouring residents along Langham Close. The height and design of the fencing is similar to the existing gates to the front of the school and also to the fencing around the neighbouring secondary school. Officers consider that the proposal is compliant with policy, and members are therefore recommended to approve the application.
Thank you. It is a sad fact of life that residents have been used to unencumbered view, but school security dictates that measures are taken, and this is similar to the style of fence we approved recently at other parts of the school and at other schools across the borough. I will therefore be brave enough to move it. Seconded.
Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Allen. Councillor Ayub. Councillor Bullock. Councillor Darvish. Councillor Dean. Councillor Hayes. Councillor Hornby. Councillor Newell. Councillor Peel. Councillor Radcliffe. Councillor Sanders. Councillor Sherrington. And Councillor Walsh.
4. That was approved. We come there to page 148, Moorgate Primary School. And there's an item on the late list for this.
The single-storey extension is modest in scale and would be sited to the north-east of the school building. The extension would accommodate an autism spectrum disorder, which is ASD, unit at the school for 8 to 10 pupils and 3 additional teachers. The proposal forms part of the council's strategy to deliver special educational needs provision across its school. An outdoor play area and a minibus drop-off and turning area for the ADS unit are also proposed. Council's highways engineers and tree officers have raised no objection to the proposal, subject to a number of conditions, and no neighbouring residents have objected to the plans. Members will note within the schedule of supplementary information that as a small part of the proposed minibus drop-off area is sited within the school playing field, officers considered that it would be prudent for Sport England to comment on the application before a decision is made. Members are therefore recommended to delegate this decision to the Director to allow for Sport England to comment on the proposal.
Ward councillors? Councillor Peel?
Sherrington's declared an interest. Happy to formally move the delegate to the Director, Chair.
That's seconded. Thank you. Proposed and seconded. Take the vote.
Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Allen. Councillor Ayub. Councillor Bullock. Councillor Darvish. Councillor Dean. Councillor Hayes. Councillor Hornby. Councillor Newell. Councillor Peel. Councillor Radcliffe. Councillor Sanders. Councillor Sherrington. Councillor Walsh.
The abstaining.
4. Thank you. Unless my bundle has lost something, we don't have an item 7.
I haven't.
That being the whole business, declare the meeting closed, but remind you that we have a further special meeting on the 19th, 2 weeks today, when there are a number of important issues to be considered, and we trust Councillor Peels recovered his voice.
Yes.